everyone. Welcome to the Rehoboth Art League. My name is Nick Sarator. I'm the exhibitions director for the Rehoboth Art League. And for the month of May 7th through June 7th, we welcome the art of a group of encaustic painters known as the Washington Waxworks. It's a very exciting show, and it's a group of artists working the encaustic medium. The group consists of Dell Kaufman, Kathleen Anderson, Kevin Milstead, Marty Ittner. And so to start, I'd like to introduce Dell Kaufman, who will speak of her work, and also from one of her members, Kathleen Anderson.
Hi, I'm Dell Kaufman, and I'm going to talk today about my work. Kathy's work involves color, texture, and multiple layers of encaustic monotype, which is a process of painting on an anodized aluminum plate, laying textured items on top of the plate, in this case drywall tape, and then putting a piece of absorbent paper on top of it. And then using a baron, she goes across the paper, and when you lift the paper, pull the print, you have textures in areas where the paint was allowed to go through the tape into the absorbent paper. So she will then cut out these papers and put them layered between layers of wax, and layers of textures on the surface. And so you get this wonderful atmospheric effect of paint and textured papers and papers that she has made herself. Here we have two more of Kathy's works, and this looks to me like a pan pastel one, where it has this sense of layered imagery and layered wax, and you can see up here more texture. I'm going to take you over to my work over here. Is working in assemblage, which is found materials, and also collage, which is various kinds of papers. And I use these elements in my encaustic shadow boxes, and each of the items that I use in the center has a kind of a history. So these are Old English type, and it's interspersed with more modern numbers and shapes. But I used these elements and printed the papers. So you can see here and here that the papers that are included in the rest of the work mirror the images in the center. I came up with this color scheme and some of these images based on nautical flags and semaphore flags. It was always intended to be just an abstract work. And yet, one of the interesting things about working with wax is that as you bend, so I'm thinking, seafaring vessels. I'm thinking, seeing layers and layers and layers of depth and these old-fashioned pieces of type. Suddenly, I'm in a vessel that's being navigated by celestial, stars and winds, and I'm having a different kind of experience of the piece that I intended to make. The other interesting things are the layers that you see here, which the foreground comes forward because it's crisp. The background goes further back because it's soft. And so we're seeing, it's almost like going forward and backward in time. And so in doing that, I adapt and I start using typewriter imagery, words that are different than the type that I have used in the piece. Because again, I'm trying to split now time as well as, the objects and the collage. So after I realized I was interested in going forward and backward in time, a lot of these images and the images over here started to feel like crosswalks. And now I'm in a contemporary city. I'm in Washington, I'm in New York City. And it's all about navigating space, navigating your environment. And so that was what I started to realize was unique about the wax, is that it becomes this dance where both my intention as an artist, but also my unconscious starts to weave together a more interesting story, and the wax is part of that story.
Hi, I'm Kevin Milstead. I'd like to first start, and I'm really pleased to be speaking about Marty's work because Marty is the reason I am an encaustic artist. First saw a show that she had on display in Capitol Hill in DC, fell in love with the medium, bought a beautiful diptych piece, and then was able to take Katie's class, which that's the thing that unites us all together here is we've all studied under Katie. Marty's a really strong advocate for the environment. It's a big part of a number of her pieces over time. She did a series about plastic in the ocean, also a work of cyanotype, which is what we're going to talk about right here. Marty's got a love of lighthouses, which is the bright side of this beautiful series, the side that makes it. And the sentinel is a soldier or a guard whose job is to stand and keep watch. And these old lighthouses are standing watch to the rise in sea level. So they are really on the front. Again, all these images are cyanotypes. Some are on marbleized paper. This is all the same image, but you can see different techniques, subtly different techniques. You get wonderful variation in the use of this image. So cyanotype is essentially working. So this is the negative, or this is the positive image. The Delaware breakwater near Rehoboth. And so when in the process of cyanotype it becomes a negative, which has, I don't know, it creates a sense of nighttime, a sense of mystery, which is really lovely. This lighthouse was built in 1885. So it structures in a new light as the seas rise, and sort of keeping that in our mind as one of the things that really drives the work of Marty. She also does beautiful collages. So I'd like to talk about a little bit about a couple of pieces in called my Ginkgo Tessellation series, and it uses actual ginkgo leaves. They are it's a very sort of intense process. In the season, these were collected in the summer. I also collect them in the fall, and then they are dried, and moisture is completely out of the leaves. Then they are painted with oil paint. That's how the color is retained. That was a hard-learned lesson from some early pieces because they do fade. They do change over time. And I've done some that's okay. That's sort of part of the piece. But I really like to try to freeze in time the season at which the leaves came down, and I just to this one is called Ginkgo Tessellation number 8. The scars are on with the process. They're painted with oil paint, dried, then they're coated with wax on both sides. Then the fun part starts, which is arranging these leaves. And they're all ginkgo leaves, but you can see each one has its own character. So I like to think of these as individuals. And they're woven together, they're all connected. Each leaf plays its own part in a kind of that almost it's like a little society. Arranging these, I go through lots of iterations, moving things around just minutely, very precisely, and then they're pressed down, stuck down. But then there's an ironing process with a small sealing iron that you probably can't really see much of the maybe you can see the swirls in the wax. That's generated by the movement of the iron. over the top. So this is a series that I started a long time ago, and in the intervening time, different colors of, this is called lapis orb. I've started over a really long period, a series of circles and squares. And that started with literally paint can lids on a square board. This piece utilizes a lead tin solder that is melted onto the surface of wax with there's gold leaf, and then there are various colors of wax. On some of my colors, I actually mix my own pigments, mix pigment with wax to create my own colors, and this one was created with some lapis lazuli pigment that comes from an amazing store in New York that it's called Kremer Pigments that sell only pigments. That's their thing, and it's sort of an artist's paradise. But I like to think of these orbs as they could be a microscopic point, a cell, a planet, a galaxy, a nebula. And so it's the sort of ambiguity of scale is something that I really like to work with and play off of.
I'm David Evans. One thing that I haven't heard anybody mention yet is what good friends we are. Kevin and I were roommates in college. Marty and Nancy and I worked together over 30 years ago as graphic designers. It was because of Marty doing encaustic art. We went to the same show as Kevin on Capitol Hill, and we bought some, we went to another show, bought some more. Then we started buying them for presents, and then I was like, I can't afford to keep buying Marty's art, so I'm gonna make my own. And then we met Dell Kaufman, who taught us how to do it. Took a couple of classes through her, and through that we met Kathleen Anderson. And we've been together as a group now for something like 7 years. Together every few weeks, lately on Zoom. Today, this time for the first time together. But we continue to have shows. We've been doing this, critiquing each other, encouraging each other, teaching one another. I think that's really cool. I share a studio with Nancy Hacskaylo, and you wouldn't know that by looking at our pieces, because I think the work we ended up with, our approach is pretty similar. This is a beautiful piece of Nancy's called Ocean of Storms, and she's taking encaustic pigment and powdered pigment and mixing them, like trying to find colors that are similar or the same, and then using the physics of encaustic, heat, air, blowing air, depth, and just seeing what happens. So she'll lay down the encaustic pigment, and then she'll lay down the powdered pigment, which is of heat, almost like some of that pigment into the hot wax to get these lovely sort of free-form effects. By contrast, when we look at some of my work, it looks like it's completely neat and very precise, and it ends up that way, but it's a very messy process. To cut into whatever layer of wax I've had, put down last, and then drip hot wax into those wells of shapes, which leaves it really, really messy. Then when it cools down, take a razor blade and scrape that whole layer down till it's flat, and then put another layer of clear beeswax on top of that. Fuse it all together with a torch, because you can't just leave it in layers or it'll peel off. So with a torch, fusing these tiny little details, but without melting them. I mean, sometimes I do, then I have to go back and make a repair. But in the end, it looks like I've done these precise, pristine little shapes. But in fact, it's really messy. I curse a lot and cry. And you start with I start with bold colors, and whatever I'm putting in the back, I know is going to be diffuse and much more, much lighter than what I put it down. So I'm really, with rare exception, experiencing the development of it as I go. I don't really have a clear idea of what's going on. Some other things of Nancy's that I think are fabulous is this, and again, she's using encaustic pigment here and here, and then here, and letting the physics of the heat and the blowing air as these vibrant, almost like geological explosions, volcanic. So that's me and Nancy.
We'll do a closing and you can invite people to the gallery. Just invite people to come down and
Yes, well, we thank you very much for tuning in to us today, and we do invite the public to come to our galleries to view this exquisite show. We have never had a lot of encaustic pieces come through the gallery before, and when this arrived, the artist dropped it off and we hung it. It gave us a whole new appreciation for the medium. We've never seen such a diverse style of encaustic from the different artists, and with their own vision on each piece, and they're all unique, each and every one of them. It's just a feast for the eyes. Our galleries are open Monday through Saturday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. The show will last through June 6th.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Are you concerned with the global warming and the effect of 120 degrees outside on paints?
The
Melting of paintings from sunlight?
Well, the wax won't melt below 180 degrees.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Or any other questions that people may have? We appreciate you joining us today.